Hello, my name is Dr. Emilee Simmons, and this video is all about what is social enterprise. So for this video, I'm going to take you through several different definitions from countries around the world. Now, I'm going to mostly stick to the West, so we're going to talk about the UK, EU, and US, but I would encourage you to go and look at other definitions of social enterprise around the world. It's just absolutely fascinating to see how different each one can be and the wonderful cultural flavors that come in depending on which country is defining social enterprise. Well, as we're currently in the UK, then let's talk about the UK definitions. So as you can see that I have on the screen for you, the UK government defines it as a business with primarily social objectives whose surplus, so any additional money, any additional resources that are created are reinvested into the purpose of that business. So therefore, it's not about maximizing profit for the individual business, it's about maximizing that profit to put back into that community, social, environmental good, things like that. So as you can see, I've underlined this idea of purpose. So for the UK, it's all about your social enterprise depending on what your purpose is, and you need to be driven by purpose. So notice we have from the Social Enterprise Coalition something very simple definition of business trading for a social purpose. So really, that's what we're talking about in the UK. Now on the screen, I also have two types of businesses on there. And these are two social enterprises that hopefully people are recognize. Now on the bottom right-hand side, we have what's called the big issue. If you've never heard of the big issue before, definitely look it up. It's a fantastic social enterprise. And what makes it a wonderful social enterprise is the fact that you have the big issue is trying to help tackle the issue of homelessness. And so what they're doing is they give homeless people a job, and their job is to sell the big issue. Now, this is an older picture. I think the big issue is a little bit more expensive now, but it's a really great magazine, really wonderful things that are in it. It's really fun. And if you go by what's on the screen, it was £2.50. So if it's £2.50 for someone on the street to buy this from this person, then what ends up happening is £1 goes back to the big issue. And what that allows them to do is allows them to create the magazine. It allows them to have the administrative staff and everything they need to run the business. But the other £1.50, the other bit then goes to the person who is selling the big issue. So this is the homeless person. And that allows them to not only receive money, but it also allows them to build their confidence, build their business skills. And for a lot of the people who go through this program, it allows them to then eventually move off the streets and to start to rejoin society in that way. So it's really fantastic. And then you can really hear some really great stories if you go and visit them on the website. On the very top, we have a picture of what some people may or may not have seen this before, but it's actually the dome at the Eden Project. So for a social enterprise, it's not just about society, it's also could be about the environment. For the Eden Project, whilst they're there to help to support biodiversity, sustainability, the biggest part of their actual enterprise, their business, is actually education. So educating schools, individuals, families about how to live more green, more sustainable, and trying to look towards sort of the earth in the future. So really interesting stuff. So if you've never heard of these companies and these social enterprises before, please do go have a look. I think you'll really enjoy reading more about them. Now, if we go from the UK, let's move into the EU. So the EU, again, this idea of yes, the social purpose is there, yet that's not the driving force behind the EU definition of social enterprise. For most social enterprises in the EU, they tend to be what we call cooperatives or associations. And what this means is that it's all about the way that the business is organized and governed. And that's what it's really all about. So how is it governed? So for example, a cooperative is a business which is democratic. So there is everyone tends to earn the same amount of money. It's one person, one vote for any sort of decisions that are made within the company. So it's very, very democratic. It's a very interesting way. So again, it's about how they're organized. It's how they have that kind of policy and behavior within that business as well. Now, that's not all of them, but this again is just give you a general idea. Now, the two companies that I have for you, one of them is Kingfisher. Kingfisher is a really great, interesting social enterprise, which is about, again, the green side of things. It's more about the social, I'm sorry, but the environmental side, where they're trying to look at plastic polymers and trying to get less plastic, less pollution into the environment, and ways they can do this to protect industry and protect the way that businesses work, but yet do it for a more environmentally sustainable way. So that's just one way that they do that. They're very much focused on the way that they are governed. Very fascinating organization. So if you've never heard of them before, please do look them up. They're great. Another one, and you might see that for those of you who can see this in the video, you will see that we have a picture of a bunch of people blindfolded, and they're sitting at a table and looks like they're at a restaurant. Well, it's because they are. In Europe, one of the European countries there was a really great restaurant started. And there you can see restaurants like this around the world, but the idea behind it was in this particular region, there were employability issues, so social issues around those with especially visual disability. So those people who are blind were having a really hard time finding work due to this disability. So therefore, what ended up happening was that there was a really great restaurant that was started, and the whole point was to educate people on what it's like to be blind to some extent, and also to give those people who are blind a chance to have steady employment. So a restaurant was created where you go in and you are blindfolded, and so the whole point is when you're blindfolded, you will be able to hear and smell and taste things much more intensely. So while you're there, you're getting this wonderful sensory overload while you're eating, but at the same time, you are also being educated on what it's like to eat and to drink and to socialize as if you were a blind person. All of your waiters and waitresses are blind. And so you really start to realize what the world could be like, gaining empathy, and really understanding how, it's very possible to still be work enabled and life enabled, even if you have a visual disability. So it's a really fascinating concept, and there's lots of different ways that you can see this as well. But that is one of the EU definitions of social enterprise. Now, in addition to these initiatives, one of there are a couple of issues where social enterprises always find these challenges just to even start. In most countries, the issues to starting a social enterprise tend to be around funding. The stereotypes, sometimes negative, about what social enterprise actually is, and the fact that it's more than just a charity. They are a business. And then also there's lots of sort of legal implications. There could be tax issues and various things that are going on. And those are the three kind of main challenges to starting a social enterprise. Now, in 2011, the EU came out with a fantastic initiative called the Social Business Initiative. And this was based on a lot of long-term research to show that social enterprises are really fantastic and the world should be full of them. Because at the end of the day, you've got a business which does social and or environmental good, but then also helps the local and national economy at the same time. So it's a win-win for everyone. So therefore, we should have more of them. So they introduced short-term as well as medium and long-term plans to help to support them, and lots of measures. And those three themes that I sort of discussed about funding, visibility, and legal are all covered in these. So this is something that I think is really fantastic, and just a kind of one of those things you can look into to kind of see what governments around the world are trying to do to really support more of these types of businesses. Okay, so we talked about the UK and the EU. Let's go to the US. So I'm going to pick on the US a little bit, but that's okay. I'm officially I'm from there originally, so I think I'm allowed. But for the most part, and this is getting better, I have to admit, it's getting a lot better. But for the academic and the typical definition of social enterprise in the US is that it means anything. It's anything that even remotely has something slightly social. It's a social enterprise. Now, obviously, they're getting much better, especially in the last, I'd say, probably since 2015, maybe 2018. They've gotten a lot better with this idea of you might have heard the term B Corps. There's lots of different things that are going on to really support the business model of what we mean by social enterprise. And so like I said, I'm picking on them a little bit, but it's getting better. So it's really interesting, but it's basically this huge continuum, this spectrum of what we mean. And this is why on the screen, you can see that I have a spectrum here of the hybrid spectrum of all the different types of businesses available, from your traditional not-for-profit, so we call it nonprofit here. It's like an older sort of idea of thinking about it, but traditional not-for-profit is like your charities and NGOs. It's all about the social impact. They get their money primarily through governments, through donations, and they don't make any money. They just receive money, but they do lots of really great social and environmental impact. And if you keep moving along the spectrum, you'll eventually get to the other end, which is your traditional for-profit business. And the idea behind that is it's just about making money. Don't care about society, environments, anything. We are here to just make loads of money. And so those are the two kind of really polar opposites. If you go really in the middle, you've got those two ideas of social enterprise and social responsible businesses. Now, here's my example. I've given you lots of examples now for that social enterprise. So notice it's still on that social impact side, but it's not quite, and it's getting close to making sort of the profit side, but it's not necessarily. So for a social enterprise, yes, they do need to make money, but they can still receive donations and government support. So it's kind of a win-win there. Now, for a social enterprise, even if the money starts to kind of dwindle and go down, they will continue their business models to continue to drive their social purpose. Hence why they're on that side of the spectrum. Whereas a socially responsible business, while they're trying to be socially responsible, they are still a business in order to make profit. So one of my examples of this is in the UK, we have Marks and Spencer's, known as M&S. M&S has a fantastic sort of program called Plan A, which is great. Please do go and look it up and try and see if you can find it. It's wonderful. And it's all about environmental sustainability, social impact, and they're very, very socially responsible, which is fantastic. However, M&S has shareholders. They are a long-standing for-profit business. So yes, they are really close to the social side. They're very socially responsible. However, if tomorrow the markets completely went down and there was a massive recession and they were hemorrhaging money, a lot of the social good that they are doing is additional to their business. Therefore, they would most likely stop a lot of it. So therefore, at the end of the day, even though they really love the social side, they are not a social enterprise, because if they needed to, they would move from or stop some of their social impact projects in order to keep the for-profit side of the business going. So that's kind of the thing that I really wanted to kind of stress with this idea of definitions of social enterprise. So no matter where you are in the world, it really is that UK side of it. It's kind of about that idea of purpose. What is your purpose? Are you socially motivated? Is it profit motivated? And as a social enterprise, you're totally allowed to do both. And I think that's the other big thing. They're not butting heads against each other. You can have social and make a profit, and it's completely fine. So that's the kind of thing that we are talking about when we're talking about social enterprise. Okay, so thank you all so much for your time. I hope that was helpful. Again, just as a kind of way to kind of showcase what these kind of ideas are, just to have another kind of nice sort of graphic for you about this kind of idea of if you're purely the social side, you're philanthropic, you're all about mission, you don't make any money, your charities and your NGOs. The pure other side, you might be purely commercial, but you do have some things that you can create, but you might just do more CSR. Social enterprise is exactly in the middle. You want to do good, but you also want to make money. You balance between your mission and market drivers, so making money. And it's always about that kind of balance. So that's a really good way of thinking about enterprises being, social enterprises being in the balance. If you would like to learn more about this, these are all the references that we used. Everything that is highlighted in black are just some additional references which you will find really, really helpful based on what you've seen on this video today. So please do go have a look, and thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching.